Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You are here with Austin from Ohio, and today is Wednesday, May 5th, 2021. I have some very interesting things for you guys today, and I hope you're all doing well as we keep going in this insane, mad, new world that we find ourselves in. Did not think that it would get this far in a short amount of time, but well, I guess I was wrong about that. I had more faith in humanity. I had more faith in the American people. And honestly, I had more faith in myself. I had more faith in myself because I feel like I'm not doing enough. Unless everything's just happening so fast to where I just feel just pushing and pushing and pushing down on us until eventually you pop. I urge you to download this video if you can, because I am probably setting myself up for a strike by going through with this video. But you know what? I'm going to do it. And if it don't get a strike, I'll be very happy about that. I was actually surprised that my last video stayed up based on the 7-step, I'm not going to say it because they might, hear and go and take it down. Then I'll get terminated. That's nice. Okay, let's see. This first one I have for you guys comes from Los Angeles Times. And before I start this one, remember when, like, the last at least 5 to 10 videos, I reference the phases of the rollout? The first phase is the voluntary phase, which would cover about 70 or so percent of the people. The next phase is the mandating phase through employers, through businesses, through state governments, maybe local governments, possibly federal government. And that would cover about another 25, 27% of people. And the last phase is the reason that they have maneuvered the military around the country all 2020, even still to this day. Because those of us who are left after that, well, we won't be that hard to get on board. As soon as I read this, I knew that that's what it was. And it says, Biden says U.S. inoculation campaign entering a new phase. I should probably start here by giving a disclaimer and qualifying my statements, so this video does not get taken down, or maybe it'll help, maybe it won't. But everything that I am putting forth in this video is for educational purposes and is opinionated and should never be used as medical advice, should never be used as anything other than education. So there's that. You guys know what it actually is, though. Anyway, so we're entering a new phase, which, let's see. Confronting concerns that too many Americans aren't getting, President Biden said Tuesday that his administration was beginning a new phase of its campaign to convince more people to get a shot and to make it easier for them to do so. At stake is his promise to curb a C that has taken nearly 600,000 lives and cost millions of jobs in the United States, and make it safer for people to gather for the 4th of July barbecues, a symbolic goal that Biden set a little more than a month after taking office. Oh, guys, great. We're going to be free by the 4th of July. Oh, man, that sounds wonderful. Wonderful. And symbolic for them is different than symbolic for us. Symbolic for them would be like, right on your Independence Day, take that. Man. Quote, we need you to bring it home, Biden urged Americans from the White House. Get V'd. 2 months, let's celebrate our independence as a nation and our independence from this situation. Well, gee, we're going to celebrate our independence as Americans again, but only after you've taken the miracle. With his remarks, Biden made official an ongoing shift in his administration's focus from a logistical challenge to produce and distribute enough miracles to public education campaign to convince more Americans that it's safe and important to get inoculated. To the consultation of health experts, the average number of shots administered daily has dropped by roughly 1/3 in the last 3 weeks, from 3.4 million to 2.3 million. Oh, well, 1/3, there's your 13. 3.4, 2.3, there's your 2 threes, and then what's 4 plus 2? 6. It's so easy. It's so easy once you've finally awakened and have the eyes to see and the ears to hear. We have enough, Biden said. Now that we have the supply, we're focused on convincing even more Americans to show up and get that is available to them. Biden said his administration was laboring to make it easier to get shots, unveiling a new federal website, v.gov, to help people make appointments and directing pharmacies to allow walk-ins. Mass sites are being closed in favor of smaller clinics, doctors' offices, and mobile operations, part of what the president described as a more granular effort. He's already urged employers to give workers paid time off to get with the federal government picking up the tab. That turns into employer mandates. There are millions of Americans who just need a little bit of encouragement to get the cure, he said. And it is a cure, right? It's a cure for the horrible virus that they see. The president downplayed the slower pace of V's, saying it was expected once the country had inoculated the most vulnerable and most eager. Yeah, the first phase. More than 2/3 of Americans who are at least 65 years old are fully, and more than half of adults have gotten at least one. The PF and MVs, which are the most commonly administered, require 2. But the struggle to break through many Americans' hesitancy is apparent in the less ambitious target that Biden announced. He called for 70% of adults to receive at least one dose by July 4th, and for 160 million adults to be fully by that point. To reach that goal, he wants an additional 100 million in arms in the next 60 days. Wow, 100 million. A reduced pace after 220 million shots were administered in Biden's first 100 days in office. Well, guys, we're getting there. We're really getting there. This is amazing, actually. I can't even believe that we're... Anyway, if I don't want to spend too much time on this, because the longer I stay on this, the easier it will be for them to go ahead and flag. But we're starting phase 2. That's all you really need to know about this one. Let's move on. Okay, before we start moving into the meat and potatoes of this video, which is going to be some Agenda 21 stuff, we're going to set it up. So this one comes to us from Town Hall. How big banks are planning to force Americans into the Great Reset trap. In June 2020, elites from around the world gathered to announce the launch of a plan to reset the entire global economy, a proposal they ominously named the Great Reset. Among the many world leaders and powerful institutions that pledged their support for the Great Reset at the June meeting were the International Monetary Fund, Prince Charles, the head of the United Nations, CEOs from major international corporations, and the World Economic Forum, one of key ringleaders of the Great Reset. Quote, "Every country from the United States to China must participate in the Great Reset, and every industry from oil and gas to tech must be transformed, wrote Klaus Schwab, the founder and executive chairman of the World Economic Forum, in an article published on World Economic Forum's website. In short, we need a great reset of capitalism, which we covered before is a great reset from capitalism. Capitalism gone. See ya. No more. Just gone along with the national identity of the United States. People would say, we don't have a national identity and this and that. Time out. Yes, we do. You know what our national identity is? Freedom. That's it. That's it. It's not, anything else. It's just as simple as freedom. That is our national identity. Well, supposed to be our national identity. We now live under one of the most totalitarian regimes that has ever existed. All right, we're still recording. The initial justification for the Great Reset was the situation. But from the start, supporters of the global economic overhaul repeatedly said that climate change was the long-term justification, the one that would allow a sustained massive transformation of society. Well, of course, they had that set up way before this situation. They had the climate change thing picked out and ready to go when they were still calling it global warming. It's because they can keep making it up as they go. They can keep saying, oh, melting ice caps. Oh, we're going to have high tidal waves, and we're going to have these terrible earthquakes and all this stuff, and there's too many people ruining the earth. And they can literally get away with anything they want. Doing nothing, they argued, would pose an existential threat to the human race. A completely ludicrous argument many on the left continuously make without a shred of solid scientific evidence to support the claim. And again, when we read things like this, I'm not a right-winger, I'm not a left-winger, I'm just an American who loves freedom. That's it. I don't take part in no partisan bullshit. That's what it is. Among the most important figures in the Great Reset movement are our gigantic financial institutions and or their CEOs, including Bank of America and MasterCard. Although many Great Reset supporters have called for dramatic expansions of government welfare programs, including job guarantees, government-provided health care, etc., the heart of the Great Reset is something called environmental, social, and governance metrics. ESG metrics offer public policy leaders, economists, investors, and banks an entirely new way of evaluating businesses. Instead of looking at how profitable a company is, how many employees it has, its business model, and other traditional metrics, ESG adds to those concerns a whole host of left-wing causes, including how green a company is, having the right ratio of minorities, whether a business is involved in politically disfavored industries, such gun manufacturing and sales, as well as other similar considerations. Companies are then given a score or rating to determine how well they align with the ESG goals. And the ESG goals are going to be aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals, because that's what this is all about. It's all about Agenda 21, Agenda 2030. We're setting up for that. Hundreds of the world's largest corporations, including financial institutions, have already created ESG systems and reporting metrics within their companies. And investor groups worth trillions of dollars have pledged to prioritize these companies over those that refuse to participate. ESG systems, sustainable investment, and forcing the world to adopt green energy sources are all essential elements of the Great Reset plan to transform the world. I put green in quotes because there's ample evidence to show wind and solar energy are not even remotely environmentally friendly, as even left-wing documentarian Michael Moore now admits. Yeah, he's a shill, though. That's neither here nor there. When reading articles like this, we take what we need and we leave the rest. That's how you got to do it. Parts of the Great Reset are theoretical and have yet to be put into place, but some components of the plan have already been rolled out or are now being put into place. One of the most important financial institutions' commitment to mandate that virtually all businesses in America adopt renewable energy. In February 2021, Bank of America, citing its long-standing support for the Paris Climate Agreement, announced the company today outlined initial steps to achieve its goal of net zero greenhouse gas emissions in its financing activities, operations, and supply chain before 2050. Note that the net zero greenhouse gas emissions rule will be applied not only to Bank of America's own operations and supply chain, meaning every company that does business with Bank of America, but also its financing activities. This is how they're going to do this. They're going to get the banks on board with this, and if these companies want to keep getting their loans and stuff and keep their businesses afloat, quote unquote, you're going to need these banks, right? So they're going to enforce all of this stuff. They're going to enforce the sustainable development. They're going to enforce Agenda 21. They're going to enforce all of it. And if your company doesn't rise to the challenge, you're gone. That's as simple as it's going to be. And right here, put more simply, if you want a loan from Bank of America in the future, you better toe the globalist line on climate change. Of course, Bank of America isn't the only bank with these policies. Wells Fargo CEO Charlie Scharf made a comparable announcement on March 8th. Quote, "Climate change is one of the most urgent environmental and social issues of our time. And Wells Fargo is committed to aligning our activities to support the goals of the Paris Agreement and to helping transition to a net zero carbon economy." Yeah, here's something for you. Net zero carbon economy, huh? Say, what do we breathe out? They could be talking about you and you wouldn't even know it, would you? Citi, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, and JP Morgan Chase, which together with Wells Fargo and Bank of America make up 6 largest banks in the United States, also made similar commitments. Well, of course, because these people that own the banks are the ones who are, well, some of the ones who are pushing this new world order. We've established that time immemorial. And do not think for a moment that these requirements will only apply to businesses either. Some financial institutions have already started to give ESG scores to individual investment accounts, as Glenn Beck has repeatedly noted, sending a clear signal that everyone will be required to adopt the Great Reset in the coming years. That's technically true, yes. The individual reset, right? Right out of the book. We don't have to read much more of this because I don't want to spend too much time on this. And there's a lot of left-right crap in here. I don't want to deal with that. If banks are allowed to collectively decide to stop financing any group of people they want, based not on financial concerns but ideological considerations, then banks and their Great Reset allies will have, in effect, near total control over society, especially if they begin to tie lending decisions to a vast ESG system. Yeah, we don't have to read any more of this because basically just says if we don't rise up and start speaking out about this, the fate of the free world depends that we do that. And we need to do that. But we shouldn't get caught in the left-right while we're trying to do that, because they will steamroll over you, and that is a fact. They will drag you through in the media. They will tie you to a far-right whatever. Of course, that was the whole point of the Trump presidency, if you don't remember. And this isn't for the people that are here all the time. This is for you new people that come here, which, welcome. My name is Austin, as you might have guessed. Yes, they can now do this because the whole point of the Trump presidency was to set Americans up in order to label a whole bunch of people in different groups, gather them all in one group, which could be discredited and later destroyed with very little effort. And that's exactly what's going on right now. Kind of like how literally before January 6th, we were telling people, and I remember commenting on just random videos, Dabu's videos, Shaking My Head's videos, Richie's videos, because he was still putting up videos on YouTube, I was commenting on Carol's video, everyone's videos, and I was saying, do not go to DC on the 6th. It is a trap. And you know what I got for that? Well, some people would tell me, nice try, soy boy. Don't even know what that means, but okay. And this one dude told me that I was being paid. How much are you being paid, he said, to deter patriots from going to the Capitol on the 6th. And I said, I'm not being paid anything. I'm just some dude, some kid actually. And I'm telling you not to go there because it's a trap. What happened? It was a trap. Just like this. Trap. Man. Let's move on. I'm really hoping that I could get into a lot of the Agenda 21 things that I have on file ready to go. But if not, there's always the next one. And it's my fault because, as many of you know, I am the rambling man. That is my thing. It's mine. Don't even think about taking it, because that's me. And every time you hear that song, you think of me, don't ya? Don't ya? I'm just messing. I'm just playing around. But I am the rambling man. I'm rambling right now, actually. I need to quit doing that. Okay, this is from, well, massawakening.org. Very good website. Very good website for anybody ever to go here. I've been going to this website for a very long time. And most of everything that they put out, you can never say 100% on something, even though I've never seen anything that they put out that was wrong or untrue intentionally. You can't say 100% when you're talking about human beings. Excuse me. Because nothing we do is ever 100%. It can't be. It's impossible because we are imperfect. And the Bible tells us that as well. We are imperfect. The only perfect man ever to walk the face of this earth was the Lord Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus. That's the only perfect man ever to walk the face of this earth, and that's only because he was God in the human flesh. Anyway, let's continue. How is Agenda 21 being implemented worldwide? What is Agenda 21? Agenda 21 and the recent ones, Agenda 2030 and Agenda 2050, is a plan to depopulate 95% of the world population by 2030, according to disclosed.tv, which it's not just according to them, it's according to, well, the United Nations and everybody else. It's an action plan devised by the UN and signed by 178 governments at the UN Conference on Environment and Development, held in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil in 1992. Its goal is the depopulation of humanity because we are too many. It is promoted by the elites as a way to, quote, save the planet, and implemented by governments worldwide. Billy Goats, that's what we'll call him, even shared his view about how to achieve this goal by, you can read that, I won't, and other means in a TED Talk lecture where he said, of course, the world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%. They push their globalist agenda on all of us of no rights to property and other rights. People were even fined for collecting rainwater in their own homes, according to Canada Free Press. And we've all heard the rainwater stories, and I'm so mad at myself because I brought this up before when something else referenced the rainwater collecting people that got arrested. There was a woman, I want to say that it was Chicago, but I don't want to be wrong. But it was an old woman, and she had a garden in her yard for like 50 years. Long time. She was a widow. Her husband died like 3 years before this. The local news in whatever city it was covered it. But the city came one day, and what did they do? They dug up her garden. It was nothing. All of her carrots, tomatoes, everything were just ripped up right in front of her, and she got home from the grocery store to discover this, and a note on her fence that said, that she had a $1,500 or so fine or something like that, and gardens were no longer allowed in the city because of, quote, sanitation and food preparation safety requirements or something like that. I was in disbelief. Anyway, this guy talks about, my name is Shoshi Hershu, an investigative journalist and activist from Israel. My book, Mass Awakening, tells the story of my personal awakening as well as that of all humanity to the massive deception of the world's elite controllers and their devastating agendas. It's an expose on dark agendas and how people are fighting back, offering hope for the future. I could have gone into denial, but Mass Awakening is my way of fighting back by documenting humanity awakening to these generational abusers. Yep, we know. Yep, censorship's increasing, all of this. Okay, let's go here. The means of depopulation. This genocidal agenda of humanity has already begun, and there are many means implemented to achieve this goal, including chemtrails or geoengineering. These, of course, irradiated food, GMOs, smart meters, G5, deployment that Trump promoted as part of a technology race, which he did, so there's another thing. The mass population migration from Africa and the Middle East. One such mean, which is relatively ignored in the alternative media, is mass population migration from Africa and the Middle East into the U.S. and Europe. In Israel, they helped bring about 100,000 immigrants from Africa who conquered entire neighborhoods in southern Tel Aviv and other cities where local population literally became refugees in their own country and fled to other parts in the country. They terrorized the locals, and it's horrendous what happens in these areas. However, all these means sound great when they are termed the Sustainable Development under Agenda 21. NGOs funding this mass migration. So how people who barely earn $300 per year could afford a journey from Africa to Israel that cost, according to some immigrants, testimonies $3,000. I discovered this is being paid for, and these immigrants are being protected by NGOs, non-government agencies, which are funded by foreign governments and foundations. I surmise that this is an orchestrated immigration to Israel, resembling that from Syria and Africa to Europe and the U.S., to destroy the Western countries and those aligned with them from within. Then I started thinking about what we aren't being told about this massive population migration to Israel. At the beginning, the Israeli mainstream media called them refugees. However, the UN representatives had checked their status. They pointed out that only 6% of them were real refugees. This required the mainstream media to change its terminology in regard to them as asylum seekers. And also they do that to erase the national identity of, well, a nation. A nation is no nation without borders. How is Agenda 21 implemented locally worldwide? Again, Agenda 21 is carried out by NGOs funded by foreign countries like the New Israel Fund, funded by the Ford Foundation and others including Muslim countries, as well as such groups as the Open Society Foundation, George Soros, and Oxfam with the intentions. I surmise to destroy Israel from within, like other Western countries. Check the periodic report to ICLEI, the UN's NGO that implements Agenda 21 locally, of 15 cities in Israel complying with its guidelines, and here on Ynet News. What is Agenda 21? According to the UN's own website, this is a comprehensive plan of action to be taken globally, nationally, and locally by organizations of the United Nations system, governments, and major groups in every area in which human impacts on the environment. See the wording there? Every area in which human impacts on the environment. You get it, right? This plan is involved in every aspect of our lives, according to Rosa Quire, an activist and lecturer who tirelessly works to inform the unaware public about the dangers of this plan. UN Agenda 21, Sustainable Development, is a corporate manipulation using the green mask of environmental concern to forward a globalist plan. It seems that using the word sustainability helps them promote their depopulation plan unabated. It sounds so green, advanced, and progressive. Does it ring a bell? That's the reason why most people will consider this plan as positive. So what's wrong with it? Pay attention to the actions of those implementing it, and not to nice, placating words such as sustainable development. Oh yes, the shadow elements implementing this plan worldwide. For a long time, I had no idea there was any connection between all these diverse topics. Yeah, most people don't. They think it's unrelated. They think it's like they see something in the news and they're like, "Oh, that's a nice coincidence by itself." You can't look at things by themselves. You have to look at them all together. If it's on the news, it's part of the plan. Just remember that. Every time I see anything on the news, I always think to myself, if it's on the news, it's part of the plan. And everything starts to make sense. You can't look at them as isolated incidents. You have to look at them as connected for an agenda. Because that's what it is. And the agenda is called Agenda 21. Man, this video is going to get taken down. If you made it this far and it didn't get taken down, I'm surprised. This agenda is run by the United Nations via an NGO called International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives, commonly known as ICLEI, pronounced ICLEI. It's implemented locally by municipalities of major cities worldwide, including London, Berlin, Rome. From my research, 15 cities in Israel joined this NGO in 2008. It should come as no surprise that Ron Haldai, Tel Aviv's mayor, is the chairman of ICLEI Israel, or is called the Forum 15, which is the forum of 15 cities in Israel that adopted the ICLEI regulations. And here's something. Whatever happens in any one country that has to do with Agenda 21, it's going to be the same everywhere. It's the same agenda. Taxpayers pay for this plan without their knowledge or consent. That is true. This is paid for by you and taxpayers worldwide, not only in the U.S., without your knowledge or consent, as none of us were informed of it, and obviously, and you didn't have had a vote on its implementation. This UN Agenda 21 is responsible for the development programs in your city that you are not aware of. Behind the mass engineered immigration in the West and heavy population surveillance everywhere, as with smart meters and 5G, you can check the Agenda 21 programs implemented in your city or town by searching Agenda 21 and the name of your city in Google. You'll find them this way. I found these programs implemented in Haifa, the city where I live. According to ICLEI's official website, this NGO comprises 12 megacities, 100 super cities and urban regions, 450 large cities, as well as 450 medium-sized cities and towns in 84 countries. This NGO stated goal is that by 2050, a third of all humans will be living in cities. And there's the link for that. They also condition the children to use sustainable transport, which is closely tied to Agenda 21's population management program, in an attempt to bring most people into mega cities and away from rural areas, which will be deemed open spaces for wildlife and more easily controlled using public transport. Yeah. Yep. They're going to say, you can't go on this land even though it's owned by the people because we got to protect the earth. You're not allowed to live anywhere. And here's what I have to say to that. What human has the right to tell another human that they can live on whatever piece of land that was literally given to us by our Creator? This land was given to all of us. Nobody owns it. And check this out. Photo taken from the United Nations Convention on Biological Diversity, and below you can see the explanation. The UN Agenda 21 plan. Red is off limits to humans. Yellow is highly restricted to humans. Green is where you get to live. Ooh, look at all that red and yellow that we won't be able to live in. So literally, wherever you live now, look at your area. I'm looking at mine. I won't be able to live in my area. Oh, I won't be around for any of this anyway, but no way. Recently, we became familiar with a Swedish teenage girl called Greta Thunberg, who, according to mainstream media, that promotes an Agenda 21 and global warming climate change, helps raise the awareness to climate issues. Again, we hear how children and teenagers and even children are being conditioned to such beliefs without perhaps realizing they are being used to promote this agenda. If the cabal doesn't succeed one way, as with Al Gore, they will push their agenda another way. Oh yeah, and also remember when they had they had on Sesame Street Grover talking about the Great Reset and how it's like resetting your alarm clock and it's good for children and all this stuff. Like, come on, man, come on. Hidden agenda that is being masked as beneficial for humanity. My primary concern here was that a hidden agenda is being masked as a beneficial plan for humanity, while being exactly the opposite. In reality, it's a well-crafted lie to slip past our scrutiny. The upshot of all this is removing national sovereignty and empowering the United Nations to gradually take control over what once was national policies. It will remove and destroy all constitutions, restrict free speech, and disarm the people. When Agenda 21 is fully realized, the United Nations will be in possession of all guns, and subsequently, there will be no opposition to their control. And that comes from the Covenanters League. Yeah. Why do you think they're going all out right now to disarm, especially the American people? They won't do anything until the American people give up our firearms. No way. No way that they wouldn't call our bluff. I know they can't. They literally can't. The American people have military dominance over all the world's militaries combined. Literally. If we were all on the same page, nobody would ever even have to fire a shot because they wouldn't even try it. The real goal of this plan. Paul McGuire, an internationally recognized prophecy expert, speaker, minister, and author, writes in his book, The Babylon Code, that, quote, the true agenda of Agenda 21, 2030 is to establish a global government, global economic system, and global religion. When UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon spoke of a dream world of peace and dignity for all, this is no different when the communists promised the people a workers' paradise. Yes. People seem to forget that. They know that communism under Lenin was bad, under Mao was bad, all that. They know that Nazism under Hitler was terrible. They know that fascism was bad. People know this. But for some reason, they seem to forget that none of those people ever came to power without them putting it forth as beneficial for the population. They're not going to come right out and say, hey, we're trying to stuff you in ovens and in gas showers. No, they're going to come out and say oh man, hey, Tim put up a video. I'm going to watch that after I'm done here. Tim, if you're watching, dude, you already know you're awesome. And talk Saturday. Let's do it. Get a hold of me. Okay, is it legal? As this plan is covertly implemented in the name of UN Agenda 21 by an NGO called ICLEI, none of us have been informed about it or have voted for it in any way. It basically leads to the loss of personal freedom and sovereignty worldwide. This is a deceit of humanity rooted in darkness and our complicit ignorance, which allows the UN to implement its treacherous plan. This is totally undemocratic and relies on our passive, ill-informed acceptance of authorities. Holy cow, is that going on? What is Codex Alimentarius? This is a term used for the food regulations that were written and ratified in 2009. In my research, I found a connection between I.G. Fabian, former Bayer BASF host, and the food laws ratified by the United Nations. It raises many important questions, such as how are these regulations connected to the depopulation agenda, Why is our food filled with toxins and elements that risk our health? Are there really too many people on Earth? Is the World Health Organization interested in our general well-being? Okay, overpopulation is a lie. A total lie. And you got regular people running around, like people like you and me, running around supporting getting rid of some people. But the problem is they never think it's going to be them. They're like, no, well, see, I'm different, okay? We need to get rid of the undesirables. Like a lot of Americans, honestly, they'll say, oh, well, we're Americans. We're not going to be going nowhere. No, we're going to get rid of the undesirables like people in the Middle East. And then people in the rest of the world are like, no, we got to get rid of the undesirable Americans. Like, first of all of them are fighting over who's undesirable, but we're all undesirables. Every single one of us is an enemy to the New World Order. They just don't not care about us. They hate us. They have a hate for human beings in general. They have a complete and total lack of empathy for us. They have complete hatred, and that's it. That's all it is. Hatred, malice. Nazis are being employed at the UN. I found out that Nazis like Fritz Termier, a former executive member of IG Farben, which produced and supplied the Zyklon B to the death camps during the Second World War, who was incarcerated for 15 years in prison after being convicted in the Nuremberg War Crimes Tribunal, was employed by the UN after being released. He was part of the committee designed to plan the food resources for humanity that devised the Codex Alimentarius. This is a UN-sponsored global food standards body which criminalizes the production of healthy nutrition both commercially and at your home, whether it's organic food, your dietary supplements, or your organic garden. Dr. Rima Laibo talks about these regulations, which is determined that vitamins are toxins and therefore to be limited in consumption to ineffective dosages, and which includes irradiating the food supply, destroy all nutrients in our food, and to switch the GMO foods to be consumed by the masses. This alone will lead to the death of 3 billion people worldwide in the next few decades, according to Dr. Rima Laibo, according to Awaken to the Truth. The WHO confirms these estimates, according to Ask Marion blog. Okay, yes, absolutely, and that would explain why the woman in her garden got taken out. Yeah, why do you think that when Monsanto first came out and they were talking about GMO foods and how they're so good and it's going to end starvation and nobody will ever go hungry again, why do you think so many people are malnutritious, but they eat a lot of food? Especially in the United States. You could say, even if they look like bigger or they look healthy, we still lack a lot of nutrients. We have a lot of ailments that come from this stuff too. How high has cancer gone up, even from when I was a child? I remember being a little kid and nobody ever talked about cancer. If somebody got cancer, it was a terrible, terrible, rare thing. At least what I can remember, nobody really talked about it. Now, your next door neighbor has some form of cancer. Your uncle has lymphoma. Your grandmother has brain cancer or something like that. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. Here is more explanation on those behind the outlining of this plan. Quote, just 15 years after they were convicted in the Nuremberg War Crimes Tribunal, Bayer, BASF, and HOE-CHST were again the architects of the next major human rights offenses. In 1962, they established the Codex Alimentarius Commission. And yes, so Project Paperclip, they brought the scientists back over here, like Werner von Braun to go work at NASA, all these other Nazi scientists to come over here to work on the mind control experiments, and also apparently to work in our food. What a joy. What a joy. And many people don't understand The United States government was literally obsessed with mind control after World War II. They did so many different experiments on people, prisoners, regular people, people who signed up, just all of it. And they were obsessed with it because whenever Hitler was doing it, Hitler was way ahead of his time when it came to mind control. And the United States government were livid because they were like, whoa, we want to do that. Let's see how we can get it done. And so goes the story of, it's all planned anyway, of course. Albert Pike's 3 World Wars, how they put these dictators and stuff in power because they were testing out which different forms of government to use and what not to use. And it was agreed upon at Jekyll Island, along with, it was it Jekyll Island? Or am I thinking of the wrong meeting of bigwigs? No, I don't think it was Jekyll Island. Or it might have been. Whatever one that Stalin, Churchill, Roosevelt, and they all met and decided who was going to lose the war. Turned out to be Stalin, and I forget exactly what. But anyway, the point that I was getting to was that, and you can even look this up, this is on record, the United States was to take all resources, not just military, we were to take all resources, people, things, and bring them home to implement them here. I would love to be wrong about that, but I am not. Because that's a terrible thing. It sounds like something you would hear out of some crazy novel or something, but, that's our reality. That's what it is. Why don't people hear about this plan? Most people use mainstream media, including TV, newspapers, radios, and other means to keep informed, which suppresses this information. Those in power control mainstream media and don't want you to be aware of this plan. The media has denied the existence of such a plan for years, despite the existence of a book entitled Agenda 21, published by the United Nations. Yep, and there it is. And we already know we will not hear about it on mainstream media. Don't rely on alternative media coverage. It's improbable that you will find information about this vast global plan and all of its goals. If the public worldwide had become aware of such a plan, they would immediately rise up against it and stop its implementation, which is definitely something the powers that be don't want. So they have introduced this plan incrementally by using appealing wording like sustainable development or some other green-sounding term, so people would gladly accept, as fascist regimes have always done. However, it's not about environmental sustainability at all. Its true goals are implemented by the deception, concealing its real aim to take over the entire planet, plane, whatever, and all its assets by a handful of people. Which, start of 2020, what happened? Biggest wealth transfer in the history of the world. Boom. Already centralized, basically all wealth in the world, real wealth, to a handful of people. And they call you selfish because you want to live in a house. Seriously. Who promotes this plan? Those promoting this agenda include royalty, such as Prince Charles, who is an avid advocate of this plan and can be seen in his speech, The New Environmental Agenda. Top politicians like Obama, who addressed the UN General Assembly on September 27, 2015, and stated that the UN blueprint is one of the smartest investments we can make in our own future. Bureaucrats, CEOs, and top of the international banks and corporations like Hugh Grant, the CEO of Monsanto, said, "This place is getting busier and more crowded. As long as you've got money in your back pocket and drive your station wagon to the supermarket on weekends, then it's out of sight, out of mind so far. The lifestyle of the global elite with their private trains and jets, fleets of cars and palaces, and their businesses are excluded from this plan and continue to be considered sustainable." Yeah, how about that? They're considered to be sustainable. But if you want to own a gas car or live in your own building, your own housing unit, that's not sustainable. What you are doing is not sustainable. Bad Americans. Bad. Freedom is bad. Bad. Shh. Chemtrails. We're all familiar with this. In 2013, after finding out that chemtrails do exist, I started writing to well-known activists on this topic like Dane Wingington. Geoengineeringwatch.org, we know him. Especially after feeling distraught and helpless about it. I was sick, my throat hurt, and there was no one I could turn to except for those activists reporting and sharing health tips on how to maintain our health and sanity when all this insane information comes out. First, after realizing this phenomenon, I took a lot of pictures, and one day I noticed 2 airplanes spraying and leaving these white trails behind them that other planes didn't leave. This occurred so many times that a friend and I just watched these planes. She also took some usable photos and videos, posted them on Facebook. I started feeling helpless and hopeless, seeing these unmarked airplanes spraying and being unable to do anything except to watch them spraying their poison. Later on, I also found that not only do they spray from airplanes, but they use underwater jet streams in the oceans aimed at our beaches where it's relevant. I actually did not know that. I would like to look more into that. Class action suit filed against spraying chemtrails. The founder of this site, Geoengineering Watch, Dane Wingington, together with others filed a lawsuit against the authorities, the regime, who are supposedly behind this crime against humanity, stating that HAARP is being used as a weapon that induces climate change. I found out about a patent for HAARP, High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, that it has installations worldwide, which together with chemtrails, they can actually create earthquakes, tsunamis, and other natural disasters. Cobra, the resistance movement, also calls it ionosphere heaters. The most famous one is located in Alaska, but such facilities can be found worldwide. This map was published on Climate Viewer News. Wonder if I can zoom in on this. I don't want to mess my recording up, but you can kind of see where all the ones are. That looks about right. And we know they can manipulate weather. I mean, they could make it rain, literally. In like the 60s, they could do that. I watched videos that people worldwide uploaded on YouTube showing strange, colorful clouds half an hour before natural disasters occurred. U.S. black budget to spray the populace like roaches. I found out that a secret black budget of former President Obama sponsoring our own demise. Shockingly, I discovered that we unknowingly finance our own genocide. Secret presidential chemtrail budget uncovered. Congress exceeds billions to spray populace like roaches, according to intelhub.com. And that goes on for decades. Here's the words of Dane Wingington on the ongoing chemtrail geoengineering. Historical records prove beyond doubt that climate engineering has been fully developed on a substantial scale for over 65 years. Hurricane suppression for over 53 years. So why do major publications continue to lie about this blatant reality? Because that's what they are paid to do. Once global populations fully grasp the gravity of the biospheric collapse that is rapidly unfolding around them, further exacerbated by geoengineering, our paradigm will overturn. Power structure is trying desperately to hide this reality for as long as possible. Unfortunately, most environmental groups and organizations are major participants in geoengineering denial. I and several other activists have attended a global warming presentation with standing room only. We made sure that geoengineering subject was not omitted from this event. Humans are on the same level as animals. According to this Agenda 21 and 2030, humans are on the same level as animals. We are to be managed like flora and fauna. Yeah, and you know what? They do believe that. As Bill Cooper used to put it, and this is actually, he got this from them, a nation or a world of people who don't use their intellect are no better than animals who do not have intellect. Thus are stakes on the table by choice and consent. It's basically just saying that we are animals. That's why they call us useless eaters. Sheep. How you view ants, well, maybe not all of us, because myself, I don't like to kill anything, and I see ants and I watch them and I'm amazed by them because of just what they're able to do. But regular people walking around, just normies, we'll call them, the way that they see ants, that's how they see us. We are to be managed like flora and fauna. Behind it all is a materialistic and secularized view of humanity, which rejects the idea humans are sacred and part of the divine. Needless to say, this is just the tip of the iceberg in regards to this hideous agenda, which I detail in my book, Mass Awakening. As the title indicates, this covers the real intent to control humanity by cutting us off from our higher sources. But I believe we will win this battle and show the methods I and others employ to keep our connection and fight back. Yep, we don't have to read any more of this because he goes on to reference Alex Jones, which we all know that Alex Jones is disinfo. He said, oh, and look, here's a video of this woman. I actually seen this before, but let's just read this anyway. How do we know that we are on a positive timeline and that we're being saved? Well, David Wilcock argues that if what Alex Jones, who discussed his population agenda by the cabal for years, including FEMA camps in the U.S., succeeded, we wouldn't be here. I feel that needs to be emphasized. If what the cabal elites planned for us all would have worked as they wished and implemented, and there were no white hats, you wouldn't have been reading this article. They have done everything to curb fertility and depopulate the planet. But we are still here, and the cabal are losing. Remember this. I would think that they are not losing. That last little bit reminds me of some QAnon crap. The rest of this is absolutely true. And this bottom part is true right here, because they did want to get this done a long time ago, but it didn't end up working like that for them because, well, we've been watchful. Let me see if I got one more thing for you guys. Okay, now I'm really playing with fire because I brought this up in my part 2 of the one video that got taken down. I'm still really mad about that. So we're just going to run through this real quick so we don't spend a lot of time on it, so they might not flag it. But 70% depopulation of the U.S. predicted by 2025. And yes, that is the official. Okay, we don't have to read all this. If you want to, you can. You can pause and read this. There you go. There you go. But I'm trying to get down to a point here. Here you go. You can read all this here. I really just wanted to come up and bring this up again just so you guys could like pause it and read it. I might leave a link to it. But this is literally everything. Yep, Deagle.com. Oh yeah. Yep, they're planning, I will leave a link to this, 70% depopulation by the year 2025. And I think it's going to work out. I will leave a link to this. I just wanted to bring this up to show you. I thought I had one more. Okay, I actually had this one for a while. And this is by The Nation. Global reset in the New World Order. You know, the one that doesn't exist. Just 1 year ago, in the first few days of January 2020, no one could have predicted or imagined that the world would go through such tectonic changes within a period of just 12 months. Oh, except for Richie from Boston on January 7th, 2020 to be exact, when he said that we know what he said, people that watched him. No one in their reasonable mind could have foreseen the situation across the world. No one could have imagined that in the wake of the situation, entire industries like airlines and tourism would collapse overnight, that oil-dependent economies would suffer irrecoverable losses, that the West would be forced to yield to the irresistible rise of China and the East, and that the myth of Indo-Pacific designed to contain China would evaporate into thin air, resulting in the containment of India instead. We seem to be living through the flux of a tectonic shift in world history. Much like the period of the two world wars in the first half of the 20th century or collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, when the global power dynamics resulted in the rise and fall of global powers. History bears witness to an empirical fact that an alteration in the global power structure necessarily affects the governance systems of corollary states. Let us investigate this claim. Modern history, its alliances and flashpoints stretch only as far back as 100 years. At the turn of the 20th century, the world was in an unrecognizably different place. Yeah, a more simple time. Europe and the Middle East was predominantly split between the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the British Empire, Ottoman Caliphate, and French pockets of power. Russia, China, and Japan had empires of their own. India, which had been ruled by the Mughal Empire for centuries, now belonged to the British. And this empire structure of the ruling powers also dictated the manner in which local governments operated. Oh yeah, we know that. Boy, do we know that. I just ruined my can of Pepsi. Guys, I put a cigarette out in it. Wrong one. Lo siento mucho. Raj, Caliphate, and kingship were the accepted norms. Democracy was not the mantra of any people. The only exception at the time was the United States, whose influence did not extend much beyond its oceanic boundaries. The First World War changed all that, completely transforming the old world order. All of the major empires collapsed, or were reduced to a fraction of their past glory. The Ottoman Empire, along with its caliphate structure, was entirely obliterated. The Austro-Hungarian Empire disintegrated, giving way to the creation of German Austria-Hungarian Republic, Czechoslovakia Republic, and the spinning off of Croatia, Serbia, and parts of Romania. The United States, which had just arrived at the international scene, was not yet the power we see today, and its governance structure and open democracy had not been proclaimed as preferred form of state structure across most parts of the world. Then came the Second World War, and its decisive victory for the Allied forces. This victory abolished the empire structure of the old, ushering in the age of American-esque democracy. Which, same thing, actually, just a different name. Japan effectively shed its cloak of kingship under American dictate and adopted Western governance structures. Even the British Empire, which was among the victors of the Second World War, could no longer retain its empire status and chose the allied form of democratic enterprise. Importantly, as empires crumbled, the ruling powers carved out a new map of the world. Israel was born out of thin air. The Middle East was literally split across borders that the Queen drew at the back of a napkin. The Indian subcontinent was split through a border drawn by the viceroy in many places against the will of the domestic people. Parts of Africa were split into smaller nation states. Institutions such as the United Nations and other Western alliances were established to institutionalize the Allied power structure. Importantly, the Western global powers, which redrew most of the global map at their whim, also guarantee the sanctity of new borders either directly or through their proxies. I actually have to read this one quick, guys, because it's 8:39 and go to bed really soon. Got to eat some food and stuff, so I'm going to go ahead and I'll leave a link to this one as well. Fall of the Soviet Union resulted in a remaking of international boundaries. East part of the Soviet Union was carved out. 18 different international territories. We know all this. Consequent governments formed within these territories also took their lead from the United States. Collapse of the Soviet Union ushered in the age of a unipolar world. For the first time since the Roman Empire, the world was dominated by a single country, the United States. The extraordinary turn of events ushered in the age of American imperialism. Since 1990, the United States has enjoyed almost hegemonic power. It has invaded countries at whim, ousted governments it didn't like, and supported despots of its own choosing. Just as importantly, this period saw the growth of the American form of government. Democracy of the U.S. brand was preferred system of government, even when domestic population did not want it. Afghanistan, Iraq. International governance bodies forced countries to undergo domestic reforms that suited the interests of the United States and to adopt American style of governance. Those who followed the American lead were rewarded, South Korea, India, etc. Those who deferred with the United States were punished: Venezuela, Iraq, Syria. Yeah, because, let's see, the United Nations, when it was created, said that they were going to use the United States as the world police force up to a certain time, to which everything could be centralized and put under United Nations control, which is where we are now. 2020 seems to have changed all that, crippled by the spread of the situation, having been drained of its global energies during 2 ill-conceived wars. Donald Trump's reactionary American First policy, which shuns the idea of an inclusive American dream, resulted in withdrawal of America's hegemonic global influence, and the American withdrawals prompted competing interests to fill the vacuum. In Syria and Lebanon, for example, France and Russia are already more important to the local power structure than America is. Countries like UAE and Qatar are looking east towards China and Russia for their long-term goals. Yeah, the reason that we're pulling out of these countries is because of that reason. United Nations will end up taking control of all of this. In particular, the rise of China, which was slow and sluggish till recently, gained tremendous pace during the course of the situation. The West reels from the effects of the situation. America loses itself in the madness of domestic strife, by design. China is gaining ground. Already institutions such as WHO and EU are no longer in the strangle of American influence. In the South China Sea, China asserts its claim on various territories, including Taiwan. American influence is dwindling. Maintaining status quo in the South China Sea may require the United States to threaten military conflict, one that the Americans are not sure they can win. And, blah, blah, blah. Shifting global powers will have consequences for international boundaries that were artificially drawn across the Middle East and even Asia. The powers that created those boundaries and guaranteed their sanctity can no longer do so. Places like Hong Kong, Taiwan, even Latika are a perfect example of this. As China decides to consolidate its control over these areas, will the U.S. risk war to liberate them? No, none of that's going to happen either. China is the model of the New World Order. If anything, China will be used as the new military arm, and Russia and other member nations to, finish the liquidation of the United States. In the months and years to come, countries in our own region, perhaps across the world, may be forced to pick sides between the United States and China. Those who come to the Chinese camp may also have to grow out of the borrowed American model of democracy and follow something closer to the Chinese model, where a loose democracy is coupled with the decisive writ of the state. Of course, this claim is speculative for now, but history bears witness to the fact that the rise of a new global power usually results in the corresponding spread of its peculiar governance structures, like the structure of empires at the time before the First World War, and the structure of American democracy in the post-World War II period. 2021 may be the first year of the rise of the East, and this new world order, there's that word, which seems to be evolving before our eyes today, will have profound impacts for Pakistan and its dysfunctional democratic enterprise. Yeah. But what they're leaving out in this article is, in this new world order, everything will be consolidated into one global structure. But we'll talk more on that later. For now, I have to go, and as always, we will pray to the Heavenly Father. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not unto temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and ever. Amen.